Hello and welcome to the 12th installment of Cincy RIMS Roll Call. I'm Adam Visnick, your host, and today we're once again diving deep into the world of risk and insurance management. Today, let's unravel the journey, the challenges, and the victories that our next guest has encountered. Please join me in welcoming Cynthia Grow. Cynthia, thanks for jumping on. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Adam. Just doing great. It was very interesting getting to meet all the RIMS people yesterday. So that was really fun. I got to know a couple other more personnels and people that I didn't realize I hadn't seen for a while, too. So that was a great luncheon. And I'm glad that there's starting to kick that off again.
No, it's wonderful to always meet people in person. We've met a couple different times. It's always good to chat with you briefly. And we had a great time at the association meeting there at your all's facility, CRUSA. And we will 100% get into that. But before we get started on that aspect, let's talk you. Let's talk a little bit more about your career. And everybody has had a unique journey. I'd love to hear more about yours. You've talked to me a little bit about it, gave me some tidbits. But tell me, Cynthia, how did you get started in your career?
A long time ago. I've been very blessed. I think my parents were cursed because of my creativity. So I was probably grounded more than I was ever allowed outside to play. But through that creativity, it's formed my life where I am today. Um, I started out going to the bank, depositing my first communion money, those type of things. So I really thought bankers made a lot of money because they deal with a lot of money. Well, long story short, I was a banker for 13 years and I grew into a position back then. They didn't have any female officers there. I mean, it was just you were either a secretary and then the boss was always the man. And I've never been one to be a feminist or anything like that. I feel you have to work for everything you get. I don't care what color, what race, what religion you are, you have to work to get there. And so I did. And I started in this, it's called branch administration. And back then in the late 80s, it was relatively new. And I worked my way up. I learned to work with architects, designers, contractors, bank equipment people. And through that, I really honed in my skills and eventually realized that they're really great at what they do, but no one saw the big picture. Nobody put it all together. So then I started a company called DEI. And isn't it funny what DEI means now?
Right.
But when I started that, it started out as design, equipment, and interiors, and then later on, when the mission statements came out, and I had project managers working for me, IT people, designers, architects. I thought, how can I come up with a mission statement that everyone can remember, especially the guys in the field, the construction guys, they're not going to remember a 20 sentence mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with what does DEI really stand for? It was dedication. We were dedicated to the financial industry.
Mm-hmm.
E was for ethics. If our architect forgot to throw in and design a plug where it needed to be at a back counter space or whatever, I instructed the construction guys, you do not send them a change order. That's on us, not them. And then finally, I for innovation. And you will, if you ever go on the DEI website, which has since I sold out to my partner, my now ex-husband. And of course, now everything's coming in on the computer. When I sold that, it was I for innovation. And if you look on there, we've been written up in many magazines and periodicals, Inc. magazine, for our creativity, something really different. I mean, banking is boring. They say they're retail, but they're the farthest thing from retail. I mean, everybody has the same cash. Everybody says we've got the best people. What made you difference? So I looked at the demographics in the area and then brought in some really fun things that you might see at Disney or you might see in Vegas. Mm-hmm. So it really became a very great success. And I'm still proud to say that was my baby. but life goes on and there's a transition. And then, of course, I had my own company again, but COVID hit, and we all know what happened during COVID. And I knew this gentleman, Harold Bryant, for years. And Harold and I ran into each other one day, and he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "I don't know. I think I'm going to be looking for a job."
Uh-huh.
And then he said, "Why don't you consider CRUSA?" And I said, "What are you doing now?" And he told me that it's a restoration company, but because right away I'm not going to get into a restoration company and an ambulance and fire chasers. That's just not what I do. And he said, "No, no, no, this is for commercial accounts." I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, okay, tell me more." And we have an app. This is what really sold me. The app that we put on anyone's phone, whether it's a maintenance man all the way to the president of the company, I don't know, I don't care who it is. If you have this app, and unfortunately, when we have big buildings, things are going to happen. I mean, you're going to have, like last winter, we had all those huge water main breaks because of the freezing temperatures. But one thing that we do is we have more like what I would call a concierge service. So the clients that we go and we do the data mining in their facilities,
Mhm.
then what we do is we have that all on board. We hope we'll never have to use it, but
Mhm.
in case it does, in a project that came up in Richmond, Virginia, was a food manufacturing place. And we got a call at 7 p.m. on that app, 7 p.m. on a Friday. By Sunday, we had 75 people
Mhm.
on site, ready to go, licensed. They knew exactly what to do. And we turned that plant over within a few weeks. So that's sort of how, a nutshell, how I went from banking to where I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite the leap too, Cynthia. It's going from the banking world, like you mentioned, putting your communion money in there and then working there for 13 years in a diversity standpoint, so to speak, and then changing your deal, but having come from that banking space, you're still in that area, that industry, but it's different. And then the way you structure the business with a very simple mission statement, DEI. Was the first one was dedication, ethics,
Yes.
and
And
then
innovation.
innovation.
Right. Mhm.
Great way to sum it up for the layperson to read rather than reading 20 sentences of a Bible verse. That's great. Love that. But then changing kind of a little bit again with where you are today, CRUSA, and the innovations they've made. We talked about yesterday at the meeting, and you've kind of hit upon it here. A lot of different things you've changed, though there's still a vein in there that kind of is like the lifeline, the banking, but it's also architecture, construction, DEI, and then all the way through to restoration, commercial restoration. So
Right.
with all those pieces and all the things that you've done in that time frame, what could you say are some of the aspects of your personality, your professionalism? What has helped you to grow your career? Because you may have been a person that was putting their communion money into the bank, but you're not that person anymore. What
Right.
has changed and helped you grow throughout that time?
Um, I think one of the best things I ever did was, I think my dad would say, God gave you one mouth and two ears,
Mhm.
and that's why you should listen.
Mhm.
And I learned that to this day, I am still learning from people, the restorations specialists, the firefighters. I mean, it's amazing. I sit down and I'm just like a sponge. It's like, well, how'd you do that? And, so I think that's what helped me through my whole career. I listened, I learned from others, whether it was that architect was telling me why you have to design this and the ingress and egress, and how you have to put a branch on a certain site.
Mhm.
Or it might be the interior designers saying, "Hey, look, you've got elderly people, they might have some accidents, and so you want to have some fabrics that are bleach friendly." That a lot of the fabrics we used back then, especially if it was an elderly population for a bank, we would use the ones that you would do the healthcare grade fabrics. So they could be bleached, they could be sanitized without ruining the fabric. So I think all in all, just going through that, and I think one of the best things I ever did was, through this whole process of growing DEI, I ended up going to Disney. They had a big retail conference there,
Mhm, mhm.
and I was sitting next to a very nice Asian man, and I'm sitting in the Frank Gehry Theater at Disney in Anaheim, and I'm so excited because the Imagineer is going to come on and make a presentation. Now, mind you, PowerPoint was already out back in those days. So I said, "Oh, I can't wait to this Disney Imagineer. What is he going to bring? What am I going to learn?" He comes out with an overhead projector and the black and white, transparencies.
Yeah. Yep.
And I looked to the guy next to me and I mumbled, I said, "Who is this Yahoo that's putting this together? I thought he's Imagineer. I'm expecting more."
Right.
And he goes, "Yeah, I agree. I agree." And he said, "Do you have a card? I've got to get going." And I said, "Yes." So I gave him my card. And he said, "You going to be at the cocktail party tonight?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Do you have a card?" He goes, "I'll get it to you at the cocktail party." Okay. A little bit later, I walk in with a whole group of people off the bus to go into the Kodak Theater and where they were having the party in LA. And I hear him say, "Cynthia, Cynthia." He was Asian. And I look and I go, "Hey, how are you, buddy?" He says, "Cynthia, I want you to meet Yahoo." And I went, "What?" And it was the Imagineer. And he goes, "Yahoo, she your replacement." And I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 really, no." And he said, and so, of course, all the other Imagineers, they were all guys,
Mhm.
and they were just razzing the hell out of this guy. But I did get an offer with Disney,
Oh,
and it was really hard to turn down. I, and you know how you always look back, hindsight's 2020. I
mhm,
should have done it, but I was growing my company at the time, and I
mhm.
just felt, I can't do two things at once. I have to dedicate myself to what my baby was.
Sure. An opportunity to focus rather than to potentially go away from home. And it's an interesting story. You mentioned early in that story that you were listening and you were learning all the time. You were listening to people talk and rather than speaking, and you were paying attention. It's just like you were with the Imagineer. With that said, and a lot of those skills are learned. I think it's valuable for the people that are listening to this. Along a similar line, what obstacles were in your way? And I won't put the cart before the horse, but I want to hear from you. What obstacles were in your way, and then how did you go about defeating them? Was it a diversity thing, or was it something else that you just had to learn? And how'd you defeat that?
I think we tend to be our own worst critics. It's just not me, but I think I'm probably more critical than others on myself, definitely. And I think maybe we all have that tendency of not believing in ourselves, or you get a little hunch and you think you should move on it, and then you don't.
Mhm.
And so it's constant. I have to keep reinforcing myself. um I don't do the meditations because when you said focus, that's a real tough word for me. I think I'm ADHD or something. But
Mhm.
the creativity, I'm like squirrel, I'm this
Right.
way, that way. But I just think trying to believe in yourself and having others that encourage you along the way, like you said earlier about a mentor.
Mhm.
Back in my banking days, had a wonderful mentor, Bill Creed, and I didn't even know he's my mentor. He was just my boss.
Mhm.
We didn't talk about stuff like that back then. And I remember making a mistake,
Mhm.
and I was like in tears. And he said, "Cynthia, come in this office." And I'm like, "Oh man, he's gonna fire me. I know I'm gone." And he said, "Sit down." I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Creed." And he says, "What is this?" And he held up a pencil. I said, "A pencil." And he's like, "Good." And he said, "What do I always write in?" I said, "Pencil." And he said, "Why do you think that?" He said, "I make mistakes all the time." And I thought, wow, that just, and then of course I broke down crying again. He said, "Cynthia, it was not the end of the world what you did. No one's going to know about it except me. You
Mm.
came to me, you told me the truth. I can deal with it." And I think that's a problem that we might have in the any industry.
For sure.
You're afraid to fail, you're afraid to make a mistake, but then again, we're human. So I
Yes.
think just one, believing in yourself and saying, "Hey, I was wrong. I what can I do to make it up? Did I hurt your feelings? Did I do something wrong? Because we all have different perceptions of what right and wrong is,
Yeah.
depending what your background is.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I totally agree with that. Even from the standpoint you were at, but also from a leadership standpoint. Your boss, Bill, he makes a great point. We all make mistakes.
Yeah,
There's no reason to beat yourself up. But from his standpoint, he could have beat you up. He could have fired you like you were scared.
right.
He might have. However, he uses it an opportunity to teach and to learn as well as learn about you. So I think that's a crucial lesson. It's a great story too. I certainly can learn from that, and I know our audience can as well. On top of that, Bill Creed, you mentioned, Harold Bryant, you
Yes.
mentioned. Is there any other mentors that you want to name? And if so, how
Mm.
have they helped you?
I'll probably go back to the third grade with Sister Mary Jacinta.
Okay.
she always she always wrote in either turquoise, most of the time turquoise ink. And to this day, I'll still buy pens that are either turquoise or purple. And actually, I wanted to be a nun for the longest time,
Mhm.
but the Franciscan nuns had, I think they knew what I was going to be eventually. And I don't think they want me hanging around in the convent.
Sure.
But yeah, I think other mentors, geez, I'd say there's so many of them because there were a couple women in my life. They were like the first bank president up in Bowling Green, Ohio. And I'll never forget her name was Candy Graham. And I'm like,
Oh,
who
wow.
would name
That's
their kids
memorable.
Candy Graham?
Right.
But what I mean, that was very, very new back then. And back then they started a chapter called National Association for Bank Women.
Mhm.
And it was there that they pushed me to become a speaker, a nationwide speaker eventually, but a speaker to enter this speech contest, the American Institute of Banking.
Oh, wow.
And I met this wonderful lady in San Francisco. Oh, it was actually in Dallas where the final contest was. In the very first year, I went from just a novice and I won at the city level, then the county level, then the, regional level or state level, then the regional. You have to go through all these things. And finally, I was one of 6 finalists in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
And there was this little lady with this raggedy coat that came out to give me the award. And her name was Claire Giannini Hoffman. What I didn't know is her father, Mr. Giannini, started the Bank of America.
Wow.
And it started with Italian immigrants. So, talk about people that I've met over my lifetime that you never know how you're going to meet these people. And another one in Dallas was Terry Bradshaw. Oh my God, that guy is a hoot.
Oh,
I
yeah.
met him years and years ago
Mhm.
when I was featured on MSNBC. Our company was noted for how we took care of our employees, and just again, I think if you had any listeners that have a firm, um, taking care of your employees, and especially in this day and age, trying to find really good employees and retain them, attract them, then retain them. But
Mhm.
I would do things like have wine tastings. We had what we called think tanks. And so we would bring customers in from the United States, and I'd have my group of people there. And, one would be a construction guy, one would be an architect, another a designer. But I had all walks of life with this bank customer. It usually was a president and his top VPs. And we would go into a think tank session and just let's think out of the box. What makes your bank different? So then we would go like that. But yeah, I had some really great, even bankers that I met all along the way. Learned how to talk the talk in
Mhm.
Texas because they have Texanisms, and I love it. Like that dog don't hunt. I'm like, what? What's that mean?
Yeah.
Where's the hunting dog?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But just having a sense of humor and meeting people and learning from all walks.
Amazing. It sounds like you're a woman of the world here, or at least of the United States, and you've got quite the experience and the stories to back them up. So I love to hear that. Um, with Crusa, with CRUSA, you're the
Yes.
director of business development. Tell me, on top of what you already mentioned, how you got there today. What challenges you're currently facing? What's your role look like there now?
Well, it's really hard to come to from being a CEO to being a business development director because I'm used to calling the shots. Well, I've got bosses now. So,
Mhm.
I'm very careful where I tread because sometimes I'm afraid that I could be a bull in a china shop. And just because I see it that way, does that mean the company is heading that direction? So I always sort of do a checks and balances within myself. But the reason I have business development is because, like I said, when Harold approached me, and then he told me, he said, no, no, this is not a cookie cutter firm. This is, we're really honing in on top level executives. He said, I know you know a lot of them in the different industries. And someday down the line, either their factory or huge office building or apartment complexes that they own, someone's going to have a problem sometime. And we just want you to make them aware of what services we have available.
Yeah.
And then when I saw how they streamlined it and they didn't drag it out, I have since learned, talk about learning from different insurance agents that now I'm meeting. And I'm like, so what? Because you don't know that aspect. I always say you don't know what you don't know. Um, it's amazing what these risk managers that I talk to, what they have to go through, what they see. And it's not just like a risk of a fire or water. And just like yesterday, we had that DEI, the diversity aspect with the two presenters. So it was, if I remember right, it was Olivia and Jordan
That's right.
they were doing the presentation. They did a great job. But it really makes your mind sort of like, wow, that's another aspect of risk that you don't think about.
Mhm.
So I don't know how everybody in your audience does what they do, because I'm still amazed as I continue to learn every day from someone else in the industry.
Yeah. 100%. I am amazed as well. And from the dozen interviews that we've had, 11 before you, not only was each story unique, but you start to not, respect quite a bit because they are wearing all hats, much like a CEO would, and much like a person like yourself has to have in order to develop business for a company. And that's the same for all these risk managers. They have a lot of hats. It's not just insurance, middlemen, it's a lot of different things. So they have to think about all those pieces. And a company like yours would certainly fit in there, having to um, you know, do commercial restoration when the time comes. Because you said, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So that's
Right.
great stuff. All right, we're
Well, one
close.
of the things I always say to customers or potential customers, because to me everybody's a potential customer, but I this is not our motto. It's something I just say that I made up. Is our business is getting your business back in business again.
Mhm.
Because I mean, if you think of what, and that helps the insurance agents and the risk managers, because what do they want to do? They want to get that customer back in and not have them at another site paying for the staff or whoever has been displaced. So that is our whole thing, because a couple of us used to own our own companies, and like I said, we have actual firefighters, former firefighters that also work with us, so they're teaching me the ins and outs of disaster and disaster recovery.
Mhm. Excellent. Great stuff. Great stuff so far. And we're getting close to the time limit in our interview. So this is the
Okay,
portion of the interview, Cynthia, where we give you the softball questions. 3 rapid fire questions. We call them Cincy RIMS rapid fire. Cynthia, are you ready for those?
I guess I am.
All
I've got my
right.
seatbelt on.
Strap in. Now, I know you're not from Cincinnati originally, though you probably
Right.
have been here for a decent chunk of time. With that said,
Yeah.
are you a Gold Star fan or a Skyline Chili fan?
Okay. I don't know why, but Gold Star is a little too spicy for me. I just love Skyline, and so I'm going to stick with Skyline.
A little bit sweeter taste. That's a good. We'll take that answer.
Okay.
What high school did you go to?
That's the one that I laughed at when I saw that question from you.
Yeah,
It's like when I moved to Cincinnati, they'd say, oh, well, what school did you go to? And I'm assuming a university, right?
exactly.
And then when you come to Cincinnati, not only is it high school, it might even go on the west side. It goes back to grade school,
Mhm.
because I think they had like 30 Catholic churches at one time. But I went to school at Woodward High School in Toledo, the alma mater of Danny Thomas and Jamie Farr, who both were cousins too, by the way. And went to grade school with Alicia Keys's mom, Terry Augello. So the Toledo, actually, Adam, I see people. I just met somebody again the other day that's from Toledo, Ohio, right here in Cincinnati.
Mhm.
And so it's yeah, Toledo was my home and still is. And yes, I'm still, even though a Bengals fan, I'm so proud of the Detroit Lions. Boy,
As you
that was
should be,
great.
as you should be.
Yes,
And Cincinnati is this a big city, small town feel. So the high school question, you laugh, but it's true. Everybody asks that
I know.
question. And certainly there's a little judgment behind it, but we have deep roots and the high schools have been here for a long, long time. And you mentioned your love and affiliation with the Lions, but also some other teams here locally, Reds, Bengals, FCC. Do you have any affiliation with any of those three teams? If so, which one would you go with?
Oh, geez. Well, I love Jeff Birding from FCC. We've had some stories back together, which will not go on film, but he's a hoot. And the Reds, boy, that goes back to my days, with the Red Machine. I was up in the Toledo area at the time,
Mhm.
but it was like, wow. And then when the Reds gave the Detroit Tigers Sparky Anderson,
Mhm.
I liked the Reds even more because we got Sparky and we ended up winning. So so you can see my home roots are still back to Toledo, Detroit, and then Cleveland too, because I did live in Cleveland. So I'm sort of I have never made a stop in Columbus or lived in Columbus, but yeah, I would say the Bengals and the Reds, we're very, very lucky to have those kind of teams and FC too. I mean, what are the chances? I'm actually on the board of the Travel Butler County Visitors Bureau,
Mhm.
and the amount of money that these teams bring into our contiguous counties, it's unbelievable. So yes, I tend to be a big sports fan.
That's great to hear. Love it. Cynthia, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on as our guest for Cincy RIMS Roll Call. I've loved the stories. I think we could probably talk for another 30 minutes, and I'm sure you could fill up that time with your stories. But again, my name's Adam Visnick. Thanks for allowing me to be your host. Cynthia, thanks again. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.